Her brothers fought over the inheritance, but Dad left one final secret. The glass shattered against the wall, barely an inch from Marcus's head. He didn't flinch. He just stood there in the middle of his father's living room, jaw tight, eyes burning, watching his older brother Derek pace the floor like a caged animal who had just remembered he had teeth. "You had no right," Derek screamed, his voice cracking at the edges, the way it always did when rage outpaced reason. "No right to go through his things, no right to be here. You were never here when he was alive, so don't you dare stand in his house like you belong." Marcus's hands curled into fists at his sides. "I belong here just as much as you do. He was my father, too." "Your father?" Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it, just venom, sharp and practiced. "You showed up twice in 4 years. Twice, Marcus. Once for Christmas when you wanted money, and once for his birthday when you brought that woman he couldn't stand. Don't talk to me about belonging." From the doorway, their sister Janelle watched in silence, arms folded across her chest, eyes red but dry. She had cried herself empty the night their father, Raymond Whitfield, had taken his last breath. Now there was nothing left in her but a hollow ache and the uncomfortable awareness that the two men destroying each other in front of her had once been boys who loved each other. Raymond Whitfield had been a carpenter by trade and a philosopher by nature. He had built things with his hands, furniture, houses, memories, and he had always believed that what a man left behind said more about him than anything he did while living. He had raised 3 children mostly alone after their mother walked out when Janelle was 6, Marcus was 9, and Derek was 12. He had worked double shifts, missed school plays, burned dinners, and loved them fiercely in the imperfect, exhausted way that single parents do when they are running on empty but refuse to quit. He had also, quietly and without telling a single soul, accumulated a surprising amount of wealth. The house alone was worth $400,000. There was a savings account with just over $200,000, a life insurance policy for $150,000, and a small plot of land outside the city that a developer had been trying to buy for years. In total, Raymond Whitfield had left behind an estate worth nearly $900,000. And not one of his 3 children had known. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support truly means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful emotional stories that inspire, shock, and touch the heart. Make sure you stay with us until the very end, because this story has a twist you'll never forget. And if this story moves you in any way, share your thoughts in the comments below and send this video to someone who needs to hear it today. Now let's begin. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 days after the funeral, when Raymond's attorney, a quiet and precise woman named Sylvia Horn, called all 3 siblings to her office. Janelle arrived first, dressed in black, her natural hair pinned back, a notepad in her bag because she was the kind of woman who wrote things down when she was nervous. Marcus arrived 7 minutes late, smelling faintly of cologne that cost more than their father had ever spent on himself in a month. Derek arrived last, 5 minutes after Marcus, and the look he threw his brother when he sat down across the conference table was the look of a man keeping score. Sylvia Horn did not waste time. She opened the folder in front of her and looked at all 3 of them with the calm, measured expression of someone who had delivered difficult news many times and had learned to detach from the storm that followed. "Your father left a will," she said. "He updated it 14 months ago. The estate, valued at approximately $870,000, has been divided. Derek, you received the land outside the city and $40,000 in cash. Marcus, you received the life insurance payout of $150,000. She paused just long enough for both men to begin calculating. The house, the savings account, and the remainder of the estate, totaling approximately $680,000, has been left entirely to Janelle. The room went silent. Then Derek stood up so fast his chair scraped back and hit the wall. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Sylvia did not repeat herself. She simply slid the document across the table. Marcus had gone very still, the way people do when their mind is working faster than their body. He stared at the paper, then at Janelle, then back at the paper. Janelle, he said slowly, did you know about this? No, Janelle said, and her voice was barely above a whisper. I had no idea. That's convenient, Derek said, and the word came out like something thrown. He turned to Sylvia. She manipulated him, that's what this is. She was always over here, always playing the devoted daughter, and she turned him against us. Derek, Janelle started. Don't, he pointed at her, his finger shaking. Don't use that soft voice with me. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every Sunday dinner, every doctor's appointment, every phone call, you were building this. You were building this for years, and we didn't even see it. I was taking care of our father, Janelle said, and now her voice broke open, cracked right down the middle. Someone had to drive him to his chemo appointments and sit in that waiting room for 3 hours and hold his hand when he was scared. Someone had to call the pharmacy and fight with the insurance company and sleep on that couch when he couldn't be alone at night. Where were you, Derek? Where were you, Marcus? Tell me which one of you even knew he was sick. The silence that followed that question was devastating. Because neither of them had known. Not really. They had known in the vague, distant way that people know things they don't want to look at directly. Raymond had mentioned feeling tired. He had lost weight. But neither of his sons had asked the question that would have forced them to sit with the answer. Janelle had asked, Janelle had been there, and Raymond had known it. The meeting ended without resolution. Derek stormed out, phone already pressed to his ear, calling a lawyer friend whose name he had been saving for an occasion exactly like this one. Marcus lingered for a moment, and Janelle thought for just a second that he was going to say something real, something honest, something that might begin to close the distance between them. Instead, he said, "You should have told us." And then he left too. Janelle sat alone in the conference room for a long time. Sylvia Horn brought her a glass of water without being asked, and then quietly excused herself, leaving Janelle to the particular silence of someone who has just been handed everything and feels none of the things she expected to feel. She did not feel victorious. She did not feel vindicated. She felt tired in a way that sleep couldn't touch, and she felt the absence of her father like a physical hole in her chest. And she thought about the last real conversation she'd had with him 3 weeks before he died, when he had held her hand in that hospital bed and said, "Baby girl, I need you to be strong when this is over, because it's going to get hard before it gets better." She had thought he meant grief. She had not understood then that he had known exactly what was coming. The weeks that followed were brutal. Derek filed a formal contest of the will, claiming undue influence, arguing that Janelle had isolated Raymond from his sons and manipulated a sick and vulnerable old man into changing his estate plan in her favor. His attorney sent letters. Documents were requested. Depositions were scheduled. Marcus, for his part, did not file anything, but he did not defend his sister either. He existed in a careful, non-committal space between them, taking Derek's calls, missing Janelle's, and telling anyone who asked that he just wanted the family to find a way through this. Janelle hired her own attorney, a blunt and tireless woman named Patricia Cole, who reviewed the will, the timeline, and the medical records and told her client plainly, "Your father knew what he was doing. This will is airtight, but be prepared, this is going to hurt before it's over." She was right. Derek's legal team dug into everything. They questioned neighbors. They called Raymond's doctor, who declined to speak without a subpoena. They found a former friend of Janelle's who was willing, for reasons Janelle never fully understood, to suggest in a signed statement that Janelle had spoken disparagingly about her brothers in private, as though that alone was evidence of conspiracy. Janelle sat across from Patricia one evening, the case files spread between them, and said quietly, "He loved them too. Whatever this looks like, whatever they think, Dad loved Derek and Marcus. This wasn't about punishing them." Patricia looked at her over the rim of her glasses. "Do you know why he did it? Did he ever explain?" Janelle shook her head, not in words. But there was something she hadn't told anyone yet. Something Raymond had pressed into her hand the last night she had sat with him, folded inside a plain white envelope with her name written on the front in his careful, slightly trembling handwriting. She hadn't opened it. She didn't know why. Maybe because opening it felt like the last door, and once she walked through it, There would be no more doors left to open and no more chances to hear his voice, even in the imagined way that grief allows. Maybe she was afraid of what it said. Maybe she was afraid it would change everything. It was sitting on her kitchen counter when she got home that night. She poured herself a glass of water, stood in the dark of her kitchen for a long moment, and then picked it up. Her fingers ran along the sealed edge of the envelope for a long moment before she finally slid her thumb beneath the flap and opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, covered front and back in her father's handwriting. Not typed, not dictated, written by hand, in the slow and deliberate script of a man who had chosen every word carefully because he knew they would be the last ones he ever gave her. The date at the top was 11 months ago, written 3 months before he had even told Janelle how serious his condition truly was. She sat down at the kitchen table and began to read. "My Janelle, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and I'm sorry for the mess I've left behind. I know your brothers are angry. I know they think you took something from them. I need you to know the truth because you deserve the truth and because I was too much of a coward to say it out loud while I was still breathing. 15 years ago, I was in trouble, real trouble. The kind a man doesn't talk about because the shame of it is too heavy to carry in front of his children. I had borrowed money, a significant amount, from a man I should never have trusted. When I couldn't repay it on time, he came to the house. You were at college. Your brothers were both home. Derek knew. I told him because he was the oldest and I needed someone to know in case something happened to me. I asked him to keep it between us. He agreed. What I didn't know, what I didn't find out until 2 years ago, was that Derek had gone to that man behind my back and made a deal. He paid off my debt using money he had borrowed himself. I was grateful when he finally told me. I told him so, but then I found out the rest. Derek had negotiated something in return for clearing my debt. That plot of land outside the city, the one I had been holding onto for 30 years because your grandfather left it to me, Derek had quietly signed over the rights to develop it as part of his arrangement. He didn't ask me. He didn't tell me. He made a decision about something that wasn't his to decide, and he let me believe for years that the land was still fully mine to leave to my children. When I found out, I confronted him. He said he did it to save me. He said he did what he had to do, and maybe part of that is true. But a man who does the right thing the wrong way still has to answer for the wrong. Marcus is not innocent either, baby girl. When I was sick and scared and reaching out to both of my sons, Marcus came to visit me once in 8 months, and during that visit he asked me about the will. Not about my health, not about my pain, about the will. He sat at the foot of my bed and asked me how things were divided and whether I had thought about updating anything. I looked at my son that day and I didn't recognize him. I am not punishing your brothers, I want you to believe that, but I am being honest. The person who showed up, the person who sacrificed, who stayed, who loved me without an agenda, was you. And I am a father who believes that what a man leaves behind should reflect the truth of what happened while he was alive. There is one more thing. In the bottom drawer of my dresser, beneath the blue sweater your aunt gave me that I never once wore, there is a second envelope. It is addressed to both your brothers. I need you to give it to them. Not before the fighting, after. When the worst of it is over. When they are ready to hear something true. I love you more than this letter can hold. Be strong, be fair, be the person I always knew you were. Your dad. Janelle sat at that table for a very long time. She cried in the deep, silent way that only happens when grief and revelation arrive at the same moment, and the heart cannot decide which one to feel first. She cried for her father, who had carried so much in silence. She cried for her brothers, who had failed him in ways they hadn't fully admitted to themselves. And she cried, quietly and without shame, for herself. For every Sunday, every waiting room, every sleepless night that had been witnessed by no one but Raymond and God. Then she got up, walked to her father's bedroom, opened the bottom drawer of his dresser, and found the blue sweater exactly where he said it would be. Beneath it was the envelope. She placed it on the dresser and did not open it. It was not hers to open. 3 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon when the legal contest was still ongoing, and the family was still fractured, and the air between the 3 siblings was still thick with things unsaid, Janelle called her brothers and asked them to come to the house. Not her attorney's office, not a neutral location. Their father's house, where the furniture still smelled faintly of wood polish and the kitchen still had his handwriting on the grocery list pinned to the refrigerator. Derek arrived suspicious. He walked in with his arms crossed and his lawyer's number ready in his recent calls, his eyes scanning the room like a man who expected an ambush. Marcus arrived quieter than usual, something shifting behind his eyes that might have been guilt or might have been the beginning of something more honest. Janelle did not offer them coffee. She did not make small talk. She walked to the dresser in her father's room, picked up the envelope, and brought it to the living room where both men were waiting. "Dad left this for both of you," she said. "He asked me to give it to you after the worst of the fighting was over. I don't know if we're there yet, but I'm tired of carrying it." She set it on the coffee table between them and sat down in the armchair across from the sofa. The same armchair Raymond had sat in every evening for 20 years, watching the news and drinking his decaf coffee and being quietly, stubbornly present in all the ways that had gone unnoticed until he was gone. Derek and Marcus looked at the envelope, then at each other. Then Derek reached forward and picked it up. He read it first, his face unreadable for the first 2 paragraphs and then slowly, visibly undone by the third. His jaw tightened. His eyes went glassy. He folded the letter carefully along its original crease and handed it to Marcus without a word. Marcus read it more slowly. When he reached the part about his hospital visit, about asking about the will, he stopped. He put the letter down on his knee and stared at the wall for a long moment, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man who has just seen himself clearly for the first time in a mirror he had been avoiding for years. "He knew," Marcus said quietly. It was not a question. "He knew everything," Janelle said. "He always did." The room held the 3 of them in a silence that was different from all the silences that had come before it. Not hostile, not calculating. Just heavy with the particular weight of truth that has finally been allowed to land. Derek spoke first. His voice was low and rough and stripped of all the armor he had walked in wearing. "I thought I was helping him. When I made that deal, I genuinely thought I was saving him." "I know," Janelle said. "But I should have told him, I should have asked." He exhaled slowly. "I've been so angry at you, Janelle. I've been so convinced you took something from us. And this whole time," he stopped, pressed his fingers to his eyes. "This whole time he was the one who decided. He made his choice and I just didn't want to accept it." Marcus set the letter down on the coffee table. He looked at his sister for a long moment, and in that look was everything the 2 of them had never been able to say directly: the distance, the missed calls, the years that had passed without them really seeing each other. "I'm sorry," he said simply, "for the visit, for what I asked him, for not being there." He paused, "for not being here." Janelle nodded. She did not rush to reassure him or tell him it was fine, because it had not been fine. But she accepted the apology in the spirit it was offered, honestly, without negotiation, without conditions attached. Derek dropped the legal contest 4 days later. The land outside the city, it turned out, still carried enough residual value even with the development rights compromised that it became the foundation of a small business Derek eventually built with his own hands. Not unlike the way his father had built things, slowly, carefully, with more patience than pride. Marcus took his inheritance and did something Raymond would never have predicted. He started a foundation in his father's name that provided apprenticeships for young men learning skilled trades, carpentry, electrical work, plumbing. He ran it imperfectly and passionately and showed up every single week without fail. Janelle kept the house. She repainted the kitchen, replaced the old carpet in the hallway, and left the grocery list on the refrigerator exactly where her father had pinned it. Some things, she decided, were not meant to be changed. On the first anniversary of Raymond's death, all 3 siblings sat around that kitchen table together and ate a meal that none of them had cooked particularly well, and all of them had contributed to. They did not talk about the will or the lawyers or the letters. They talked about him, about the man he had been, the things he had built, the love he had expressed badly and meant deeply and left behind in ways they were still discovering. Outside, the evening light was fading. Inside, something that had nearly been lost was quietly, imperfectly, finding its way back. Raymond Whitfield had been a carpenter by trade and a philosopher by nature. And in the end, the most important thing he ever built was not a house or a piece of furniture or an estate. It was the truth. And he had trusted his daughter to deliver it. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. There are more stories just like this one waiting for you.